morning, welcome to the SiteSolve webinar, SiteSolve powered by VU.CITY, where we'll be taking a look at the generative design tool, SiteSolve. I'm Andrew, I'm in the business development team. I'm joined by our head of commercial, Claire Locke, as well.
Hi, welcome everyone, and thanks for joining us today.
So the majority of the session will be a demo based in the SiteSolve platform. During the demo, if you do have any questions, then please make use of the Q&A section as well. You should be able to find that as one of the tabs within your Zoom. We will be kind of combing through those questions. Claire will be doing her best to kind of pick out the best questions from in there. We'll do our best to answer those questions as well within the Q&A session at the end of the session. But first, I'm just going to really briefly kind of run through generative design in the context of SiteSolve. When I've kind of put together a few slides here, only a couple of slides to really kick off. So SiteSolve is a generative design tool that uses AI and automation to help users explore design options and generate solutions based on goals and constraints. This will make a lot more sense as I go through the demo. As I said, this is a really brief introduction, but just before I do that, we're going to see where SiteSolve really kind of fits into the design process and how it can help speed up the process. Now, apologies if the sound is bad. Can anyone else within the Q&A just confirm if it's working or not? Working. Okay. Well, we'll crack on. We'll continue going. A lot of people are saying it's okay, so we'll cut that out of the video. So yeah, I'm going to continue. Looking at that process, so the typical design process over time. So really, when you're picking up a project, you have a lot of design freedom, but not so much knowledge. If we're looking at the left-hand side of this kind of bar graph, the graph here. But really, very quickly, that design freedom starts to drop as your knowledge increases, and the cost to make changes to your design are often time-consuming and costly at that point as well. So what we're trying to do is really enable the user or enable the consultant, the developer, the architect to understand, have as much knowledge about a site as early as possible during that kind of freedom of design stage, so giving options and iterations to enable better decisions at the end. And this really is where SiteSolve comes in. So understanding the key risks at the start of a project can really bring that knowledge arc forward to the earliest point of that kind of design stage within there. You get a lot more comfort in that decision making, and then hopefully through proper use, through getting the best options within the platform, you can avoid costly late changes and de-risk the project at that point as well. So this is where I just crack on and go straight into a live demo. So we're going to start this live demo in VU.CITY. So just 1 second while I load up the VU.CITY platform. So I've come straight into the VU.CITY hub here. I've already created a project. This is my SiteSolve webinar project on a location within Camden. I'm going to launch the 3D app, in this case, on desktop. So I'm just launching a VU.CITY kind of instance at this point. Now, the process that I'm going to take you through is VU.CITY to SiteSolve round trip. However, it's important to mention that SiteSolve is a standalone piece of software, so you don't have to use VU.CITY at this point to create a site boundary and to kind of continue looking at site context and parameters within there. However, we do recommend it where VU.CITY is available, and I imagine a lot of you are already kind of well versed on VU.CITY, having attended a few of these webinars in the past. But where it can really help is to understand the site constraints, limitations, and also context really accurately, within 15 centimeters accuracy of roofscape, the terrain, and the trees, canopy height and width. Now, once it's loaded, it shouldn't take too long to load at this point. So I might just skip the updates right now and just go straight into the project. But once it's loaded, you'll see that modeling, and from within here, this is where we can start to select the site, potentially remove elements from that site, so buildings, which is what I'll run through quite quickly. And then at that point as well, create a site boundary. So here we go. Didn't quite fail me, it just took a few more seconds than usual to log in. So I'm going to load this project that will be created. You can see that modeling come in, so that's that 15 centimeter modeling that I mentioned. And once that's in, we can start to define the site area. As I said, this is a site in Camden. Just going to let it load 1 more second. Just to fill out the full site. As a really quick refresher, those blue buildings, they are on our consented timeline. So they are blue for under construction, and the dark grey building that you can see to the south of the site in this case, that is actually completed since we took the flyover of the city. And the yellow one is an approved scheme. We'll hopefully get into actually creating that site very, very shortly. So that whole site is almost loaded now. Once those buildings are in, I'm just going to freeze the loading and we can go from there. Okay, so we've got that site in there. I'm just going to freeze the loading. And at this point, I'm going to remove the buildings on the site that I'm interested in. So what we're doing is we're moving away from previous VU.CITY use, which might have been to create single blocks or single buildings within the platform. We're really moving away to looking at the site as a whole, because all of the hard work is going to be done within the SiteSolve platform, not necessarily VU.CITY. As a VU.CITY user, though, what you can do is try and input as much quality, valuable information at the early stage of that design process. So things like understanding, if I just remove all of these buildings on the site, things like understanding overshadowing on the site, or maybe even understanding other limitations around the site through certain data layers. I picked this site because I know that it's going straight through one of the London Viewing Management Framework areas, but it's a really good example of how a limitation can be used in that design process. So if I just bring on the London panorama, turn on all of those views, so they're strategic viewpoints going all across London, really kind of traversing St Paul's and Westminster as well, but we've got those loaded in here very accurately. So I can see where that sign is potentially restricted by these viewpoints within here. I'm just going to toggle that off for a second and then come back to developments and create a outline. So this, as I mentioned, we're moving away from the idea of looking at individual buildings at this point, but we're looking at the whole site as a whole. I'm just going to take that site using exactly the same create tool as has been in VU.CITY now since the beginning, pretty much. As I'm doing this, you can also see a number of those calculations as well in terms of kind of boundary length, but also we would be able to find the area if we were using the measurement tools within here. But at this point, I'm just going to bring it up a number of levels. In fact, I'm going to bring back on the protected view layer just so I can see how tall I can go at this point.
And it's worth noting as well, we do have the land reg show on the layers. So if you didn't want to get the red line boundary on the site, you could then trace around that red line and use that as your boundary.
Exactly, yeah. Other data, things like conservation areas, listed building points, even transport and environmental data as well within here. So you might be looking at capacity of your sites. looking at particular. Sorry, I can't speak and do at the same time, it seems, so I'm trying my hardest. But there we go. So I'm just pushing and pulling some of these levels. I know now that we can get a lot more height over at this area, over this side. So I'm just going to again push this boundary in here, and then I'm going to remove or just nudge across. And within this point, I'm going to add more height. Of course, I could put a lot more scrutiny into it. I could have a look at the overshadowing, as I mentioned before. But really, just to give you an idea of an output or a SiteSolve model that is created from within the platform, this is doing quite a good job. I'm just going to set back these few stories from the road as well. As an example, and add a little bit more height. So the more energy, the more effort that you put into this process, the better the results will be. And I'm just going to export this now as a SiteSolve model. So you can see that's exported to the project drive. So that's gone straight to the hub project that I'd already created to then be opened in SiteSolve and review it there. So just 1 second as I do that quickly. So let's stop sharing. Okay. So hopefully now you can see my hub project again. So within that hub project, we can see the activity. You can see that just now I created this SiteSolve model. If I click on that and download that to my PC, I can actually open that straight away into SiteSolve. And within there, the information that will get copied across is the site boundary, so everything in that red line, but also that height limit. So those height limits that I've already specified by using the Create tool within the platform. This then gives me quite a good canvas to start going through those generative design options, the inputs within here. But before I do that, and I mentioned that SiteSolve is a standalone platform in its own right, you don't have to start in VU.CITY to get to this point. You would be able to create a site boundary, perhaps from using a CAD drawing as a starting point, or just an image, or maybe an aerial photograph. You could start with tracing around that if you wanted to. But from that point, you can set height limits within there. You can also set other things like, when I come to sites, even if I come to create, you can set things like roads. So where your fixed routes might be going through the sites. In this case, I will just put one fixed route in here. I don't really want to limit development too much in this demonstration, but I'll add one in this case. So I'm going to put a fixed route just across the site here. So that fixed route's in there, and that won't get built upon, but we can also determine how wide we want those fixed routes to be as well within here on the left-hand side through the targets option. We can also add attractor points, so we can choose whether our site wants to have the majority of its apartment space to the west or the east. We can really be quite specific in determining that. That might be apartment space, it might be office space, it could be housing as well. But we can choose the kind of percentage makeup of the site within the left-hand side here again. So I'm going to start off, I'm just going to increase the GEA at this point. I can just add it 0. But in this demonstration, I'm going to select 100% apartments and 0% offices and housing. At this point, also, I'm going to exclude podium GEA, but it's really clear, it's really useful to understand that although apartments are stacked or buildings are stacked, so we have one use per block, really, within the SiteSolve exports, what you can do is you can save space at the base of a building or a block for alternative use, and that would come through the use of podiums within here as well. So I've put in my targets. I'm just going to put in some development limits at this point as well. So I've already got height limit zones in the platform, but what I will need to do is just increase the height limit on the left-hand side to a height that kind of outstretches these zones that we've got here. The generative task will always take into consideration, or will always prioritize what has been inputted within the actual kind of model side before the numbers on the left-hand side. So it's just a quick turn. I'm going to go to 100 meters. Maximum stories, we'll keep that at 30, and we'll just take down the external space to 25%. Now, there are quite a few inputs that I'm going to go down here. It does all lead to a bit of a climax when I get to the kind of play button at the bottom of my screen, which hopefully you can see. In fact, I'll just, come down here so you can see that down here. That's when the generation will actually kick in and you'll start to see changes within the model here. But to be able to get an effective result, we really do need to kind of go through, get as much information in the left-hand side as possible. So I'm just going to quickly run through a lot of these, give you an idea of the sort of output. Of course, this won't be optimized in any kind of way that really suits perhaps that site, because there is always an element of not just the machine, but also the user as well behind that and the information that's going in. It's all about generating options, but also being able to kind of manipulate those and understand and add your actual consulting expertise to it as well. So overlooking distances, fairly standard. We've got front spacing, back spacing, and overlooking tolerances between blocks that are built within the platform. We can come to layout. So we've got the maximum plot edge length of each block again. The site edge setback, I'm keeping this at 0 meters, but that is the distance from that boundary that you've already got within here. I mentioned you can change road widths. You can here. We're currently at 9 meters. I'm just going to close a couple of these so we can open up some more. If I drop down to residential blocks, then this is where we can get really specific about the block typologies that we want to include in the options that we're giving. We have 5 options as standard within here. Very obvious there, but all of those you can then choose the story heights within the individual blocks that you're creating, the apartment depths, the free ground floor space, the aspect ratio, going down to corridor width, corridor wall thicknesses, and partition wall thicknesses, and even corridor loading as well. We'll come on in a bit more. We'll come on to corridors and also cores in a lot more detail in a little bit as I go through these options here. I mentioned podiums. I don't really have too much more to say about that. You can choose the number of podiums that you want within the site. Office blocks will work in the same way in terms of typologies as apartment blocks, but really you're offering a area space for each level within those floor spacings. I'm just going to go down a bit further to apartment types. So this is where you can get into the detail of the individual apartment types within each block as well. You can start, we've got 4 presets within there, so studio apartments up to 3-bed apartments, but really you can add as many new types as you want to within here and give different options for each of those around the area of those spaces, occupancy perhaps, but also value as well. So very quickly, you understand the kind of comparable values or the expected values of these sites, you can start to calculate that instantly from when we run the generation task as well. But it's important to add, so perhaps you've got a couple of 1-bed apartment types, different sizes, you could add both of those into the mix and choose different mixes for each of those as well.
Yeah, this part is really allowing you to sort of import the product that you're working on. So if you're not working with your clients and they've got specific layouts for each of their apartment types, you can import all of them in here.
Yeah, I mean, it might not just be standard rooms that you're looking at, it might also be amenities or shared spaces as well. So perhaps you're a build to rent developer and you're looking to put a shared kitchen on every second floor or a gym, then you can add those as well within here. We've got lounge space, as an example here. Of course, we've got storage and cycle and waste storage as well. But again, working in the same way as those apartment types, you can change those frequencies throughout the project as well. And then coming on to apartment mix. So this is where you can choose the mix across the whole site. So that's everything within this red line boundary here. And the generative design will do its best to get you as close as it can to that mix that you've offered there. It's not just, I guess, limited to apartments and office space. You can also have a look at kind of large housing developments as well. And actually the level of detail that you can get into with some of this is quite high. If I come again into looking at making up a single plot, in this case we've got a 2-bed terrace, we can have a look at the width, the depth of those houses within there, but also the plot area as well. So looking at the garden, front and back, and parking options as well. All the way down to looking at roof pitch within here. If they're, again, looking at product books, if there's a particular set of standards that you're going to, and that is going to change the height, perhaps, of that project. That can then either be reviewed again through VU.CITY when you bring it back in, or just understood in more detail within here through the XF exports. I'll come on to the exports and SiteSolve in a bit as well. So we're getting very close now to the point where I'm going to click optimize, but this is almost the most important bit kind of coming up, because we have tested our generative design against others, and one thing that we've had commented that really sets us apart is the core spacing within the platform. Now Claire can probably go through a bit more detail some of the background to SiteSolve and how we really kind of set it up to help to work in this case. So
absolutely. So the software behind SiteSolve is validated by the engineering company called Ramble, and they have decades of experience in the UK planning industry. So the core placement is validated by them, and that's really where we get our confidence from. And so that credibility of designs is really high because of that validation from Ramble.
Yeah. So within those core areas, those cores will be spaced exactly as Claire was mentioning. But again, these are all kind of to fire safety standards and regulation. So you can be quite confident that where those cores are placed is actually buildable coming into the project. Again, de-risking that, bringing that knowledge to the project at an earlier stage to make sure that no design changes are required at that stage. Office cores, I'm not going to go through that. Plant rooms within here, we set plant rooms at ground floor within here. And we've also got heating and other elements within here as well. But at this point, I'm going to click the magic button, and hopefully we get some interesting generations come through here. So as I click go, run generation task, moment of truth. Right, we're off. Don't panic then for a second. So it's running through all of those inputs. Again, being that it's kind of constraint driven, running through those inputs, understanding what's possible on the site, and I'll very soon, I'm hoping, start to show some of the options that are available within that site.
Give it a minute.
I'm doing that.
But it's worth noting the optimization, you can choose multiple optimization criteria. So we just hit maximize net area at the moment. But you can optimize for efficiency, you can optimize for primary views, dual aspect apartments. You can even go down into a custom optimization weighting, and that would allow you to select a number of criteria that is important to you and to the site, and have the generation run those at a certain ratio mix. So, for example, you could say that the most important thing on this site is to maximize net area, but the second most important thing is to maximize the number of dual aspect apartments. And you can really go into that weighting of those different criteria and allow the software to optimize towards those.
Yeah, running into a bit of an issue here. I'm just going to go to a quick idea and change that optimization task and see. If not, I might have to restart, unfortunately. Fortunately, I didn't change too many of those elements within the left side, so I'm going to just do that very quickly.
And it's worth noting, even though Andrew's going to do this generation on 100% apartments, we can run the generation across sort of a mixed use scheme. So if you wanted to have a mix of office space, apartments and housing, the software will do that. And sort of you can really tailor it to the specific site. And also you can run through multiple different ideas on the site. So if you wanted to first set up the site and sort of do 75% apartments versus 25% offices, and then rerun it so it's 70, 30, 75, 25. You can do all of that and store all of those options, and yeah, really test what's going to work best on the site.
Yeah. Okay. So hopefully you can see my screen again, and I can see that it's starting to work straight away as I come off that. But yeah, exactly. I'm doing this on 100% apartments. You can also save all of these changes that you make. So when you come to a new project, you won't have to re-input them every time in the case that I've done here. But I'm going to run that generation task. I'll change that development height again to 1.
And what you'll see here is every time the generation finds an idea that it feels is more appropriate for the inputs that Andrew's put in on the left-hand side, the generation will jump to that idea. And then I always like this on the right-hand side, the sort of little blue GIF that's working through, that's sort of the computer's, I like to call it the computer's brain working through the best idea that it finds, or the idea that it finds most appropriate on this particular site. Yeah. So at this point, I've just saved an option that I quite like. I'm going to store another option within here, but this runs a generative task called simulated annealing, which means that actually, if we run this to 100% 3 times in a row, it might not necessarily come to the same result. But what it will do is it will randomly pick options and then start working generations from that and picking the best options from that point. So it's really good to keep working with the platform, keep an eye on it, save options that you like, but also you're not limited, and I mentioned this earlier on, you're not limited to the outputs of the platform. You can start to design with it and generate your own custom optimizations that you want from within here as well. So it might be that you know an exact, at this point I'm just going to save this option again, but you might know how you would like to weight your GEA to south-facing apartments to potentially the apartment type as well. So you can start adding those as custom optimizations within here. So I'm just going to give an example then of changing one of these blocks in a second. But first, I'm just going to open up on the right-hand side some of those key areas or those key metrics that you can start reporting immediately. So the task is still running, but at the time, we can also see the total site area, the footprint ratio, 31% currently, but also the residential GEA. We can have a look. If I come down to the residential now, we can go into a bit more detail around the total units, number of units on that site, and even further looking at the different percentage of each of those options as well. So if we then compare that to the apartment mix that we set out earlier in the process,
we can see that we're running at studio apartments at 14.4% at this point, where we're trying to optimize the 15%. So we're very, very close to that figure. We're at 34.8% in terms of one bed, where we were supposed to be at 35, and the others are very, very close too. But you can see the total population, the net to gross ratio, and more within there, as it keeps generating these options. One thing I will very quickly come on to then is the ability to actually kind of change some of these generations that have come within here. I'm going to make, currently this looks very dense over in this corner, and we are maximizing to net area as well. So that would be the reason for the density currently given the G in there. But it might be that we're aware this needs to be a lot lower at some point, at least to bring light into the site, or even just for visual impact. So at that point, I'm going to, what I'm going to do is just edit the block that I've got here. So I'm going to pull it down in this case. I'm going to save that as an option as well. So I've got my two options there again. And immediately that would have changed the apartment mix and would have sorted out the components of that site straight away. Okay, so I've got a few options here. These are very dense in the way they are. Just going to quickly completely change the optimization to south-facing apartments. This will change it completely, but it will give me a good opportunity to show some of the analysis that you can start to run in SiteSolve really quickly. I'm aware that we're kind of running low on time. We're going to come around to some questions and answers, but hopefully this will give a bit more to talk about. So please don't forget about the Q&A section. If you've got any questions, chuck them in there. But at this point, I'm just going to save this as an option, and we're going to review those south-facing apartments within here. So I'm going to come to analysis quickly. I'm going to go to views. I'm going to view those, in fact, in the analysis results. I'm going to put viewpoints within here. And you can see all of those green points have a reasonable south-facing view. We can choose the bearing of the viewpoint, so it doesn't have to be south-facing. It could be perhaps you're on the river and you want the viewpoints looking towards Tower Bridge. It could be whatever you would want it to be within there, but you can again get those results within here. So if I come down to views with an option, we can see how many units have that primary viewpoint. In this case, 205 of those units. Okay. And we have other analysis results within there as well, things like overshadowing within the site that you've got here. Whilst I'm in the viewpoint, I'm just going to toggle off some of this envelope as well, so we can come down and scrutinize a bit further the model that's been created. So you can see the individual kind of apartment mixes within here. They're color coded within there, but you can also see those core locations. And again, really kind of highlighting the fact that they are within those regulations and in reasonable positions. You've got those locations within there, so you can start to understand exactly how that block is made up with those corridors as well. But all of this can be exported then as in a number of ways. So first, we've got the numerical exports that we can take out as CSV files to load up in Excel. It makes it a lot easier if you've got a number of options to start comparing those options against each other, run other analysis at that point as well. But from more of a design-led approach, we can also export DXF models from within here. So you get all of this information in the DXF output, all exportable to whatever CAD bin package you're using at the moment. And each line within there, each floor, each units would be individually selectable. You can start adjusting and moving your designs and proposals at that point as well. So again, bringing in a bit more flexibility from the design side.
And we've also released the ability to export as a JSON file as well.
Yes. Yeah, so we've got those export options within here, so you've got JSON as well. But in this case, what I'm going to do is I'm going to export all of these options as a SiteSolve model again. I'm just going to save it as a SiteSolve model. So, but I'm going to save it as another option. So let's call this ideas. So I'm going to save that file. I'm going to go back to VU.CITY. I'm going to go back to my hub at least. And I'm going to import to the drive that SiteSolve file. There we go. So if I upload the file, now what I can do is go into the platform, which is still running here, and import that model. I'm just going to import from the cloud, from my project drive, that ideas SiteSolve model. I'm going to load that. It's already geolocated. All that geolocation is done when we exported the model from the platform, from VU.CITY platform, that is. So if I just click import, those options will come into the platform. In time, there we go. You can see that none of those options now have breached the area that I've put within here. Perhaps by a millimeter or two, but in no way they're kind of breaching those limitations or those stipulations that I put in there. So I'm just going to remove now that creates the file that I created. You can see immediately all of those options that I've exported from SiteSolve. They are all in the platform. I'm just going to toggle a number of those off. So we've only got one showing. But it's a good demonstration there of how you can look at those options, understand those different options from perhaps viewpoints at ground, and just dragging off and bringing those different ideas as you're going. So I'm going to select this option as my favorite point at this time. We can see that the London Viewing Management Framework or that viewpoint is fine at this point. So I'm just going to remove that from the view. And very quickly, just create a few camera points from the ground. So just select the whole site and select some cameras. This again is the VU.CITY functionality, so I'm bringing that round trip, but really justifying perhaps some of the options that you've created already. Those views don't necessarily have to be from the ground. It might be that you're interested in understanding what the viewpoint from a particular unit that you've generated would be, to really get into the depths of understanding potential values for that site as well. At a really, really early stage, we're 30 minutes really into generating this through SiteSolve. So that initial land assessment, land survey, capacity study, and optioneering can be done really, really quickly at this point. So I'm just going to select one of those views at the ground. It's not a static view in the way that VU.CITY works. It's always kind of editable in this way, and you can manipulate it as well through here. I'm just going to take the building highlighting. Some modeling to load up in the background. I've added some towers to what seems like quite a low area here, but I'm just going to add a few more atmospheric options as well, just to help with that image. Just to that point as well. But as I was mentioning, if you're going through that kind of optioneering stage and you want to understand how that differs to potentially another option that we've generated, then you can do really and you can take those from set points that you've already decided upon. Just to finish off, really, I'm going to load up that view from the building. I think it's a really powerful kind of way of running through a project, especially through that kind of initial investment stage even looking at the potential for a site. So might have to load up a second in the distance, but while that's going, I guess we can start answering some questions that come in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Apologies for the audio. We can see there are quite a few issues with that.
So in terms of being able to create and add specific room types within the SiteSolve platform, absolutely you can do that. So you can add as many different room or as many different apartment types as you wish, and even housing types as well. You can give them a custom color. So again, if you're working to a specific brand guidelines, you can have all of that sort of in as an input for SiteSolve. Just trying to read through some of these.
So the embodied carbon features then. So we do have a kind of calculator for embodied carbon within SiteSolve. It is a kind of guide, but we can definitely calculate or estimate above ground carbon. Obviously, we don't have the ability to start looking below ground and understanding the foundations of certain sites as well.
So what you can do in SiteSolve is you can input the building material that you'll be using, and so the apartment structure, and then also the facade material. And once you've done that, you can rerun the carbon sort of estimated embodied carbon calculation. As Andrew mentioned, it's not it's only for that superstructure, so we don't know what you'd be digging into, so we wouldn't be able to give an estimation sort of structure below ground, but certainly the above ground structure we can give an estimation on.
Yeah, I'm just going to pick up that analysis that you've got within here. So again, you've got that residential upfront and podium upfront carbon within there. If we come to the create, always within analysis actually. So if we go to analysis, have a look at carbon within here. This is where you can start to get into a bit more detail around the apartment structure and facade and percentage of glazing across the whole site as well.
The lifespan as well of that building. And again, all of this information would be in the exported CSV file, so that you can review it and again test those different options. So it will obviously do the calculation for each idea that you have saved, and you can tweak each of those sort of building material or the input materials as well per idea. So again, getting that really good understanding of well, the implications of what you're building with on that particular site. I saw there was a question there about the if you sort of start to manually manipulate the designs, how does it then respect the apartment mix that you've put in? So actually, what you might not have noticed is when Andrew was sort of dragging and sort of pushing and pulling on one of the massings, you might see that the colors will jump around, and that's because as you edit the building structure or the 3D shape, the software will actually try and jump. You can see it there, just sort of jumping around those different colors, and that's because when you're doing that, the software is still trying to optimize to that mix that you've put in. You can also save or lock certain buildings. So, for example, if you really liked one of the designs or one of the buildings within a design that the software had generated, you can lock that, either the entire building, so not only the footprint, but the mix within it as well, or just maybe the footprint, and then have the software generate around that particular building that you like. And that's quite handy if you know, for example, that you absolutely know where you need to place a tower on a particular site. You can save that and have the generation run around that particular point that you want it to be tall. Is that too tall?
Yeah, and on that, I think we didn't really touch on the Create tool in too much detail, but it is really powerful, and it is that whole process of being able to design to potentially initial ideas that you already have for a site, but then also run generative design around that or on it, on top of it. So in this case, I'm going to remove these buildings here because it might be that I'm already well aware of what I want to get on this part of the site. So I can go in and draw blocks within here. I'm going to want a corner block. So just quite quickly, and you can draw this a lot more accurately than I am right now. But I want a corner block, and I want that to be, let's say, 10 floors. So I'm just going to type in the number of floors that I want it to be. Immediately, you can see how that's generated within the mix as well. And it's not necessarily a standard that would have been created already, given the angles that we've got within the budgets. A bit further over, there you go. So those cores are getting placed in different locations. Yeah, okay, so let's see if I just go. Yeah, so I think we've answered a few of these questions as I'm going through them around kind of export types. So yeah, the XF file exports.
Yeah, we will send a recording of the webinar following today's session around to everyone. So we'll make sure to include that email address that you put in Felix.
Yeah. So yeah, there will be a recording as well. So we will share that with you. And in fact, in terms of questions, we've pretty much gone through those. We do have one which I'm going to attempt to answer, but I might not give the best answer. But we can also follow up. If you've got more technical questions, it's really key to get in touch. You can get in touch with us directly, and we'll put our contact details as well on a slide at the end of this webinar, just so you can note those down and fire over any questions you've got. But more technically, we can always revert or defer back to those who are building SiteSolve and have that knowledge. In terms of dealing with usually larger requirements at higher levels to maximize development views and value, again, that might be where you want to attract a certain level of GEA. If you're looking at a particular point of your site and you know you want your largest GEA to be at that point, or the largest height to be at that point, you'll start using the height, the height limit zones that we initially set up at the first point. So you might want to limit a certain area to that high point and then keep low lying areas around that to maximize the number of viewpoints from that block. But yeah, and then of course we're also using the customization, looking at the maximizing the viewpoints, and again using a bit of computer and human intervention. You can start to manipulate some of those blocks as well within there, and then assess those as I did through VU.CITY, looking at the actual individual views from each point within the emerging context of the whole of London, as an example, and other cities and towns that we have available. I'm not sure if that answered the question. If it didn't, then get in touch and we can have a conversation if there's a bit more detail. But yeah, no, we've got through quite a lot there. Okay, so one more question about the CAD, exporting to CAD. So we export, in fact, I'll just go to export this file. I won't actually export it and open it up in CAD. If I come to the export options and export DXF, as I do that, I'm just going to save this option. It will give me the options on what elements you want to save, what ideas you want to save as well. So I could save all of the stored options or just one or two of those. But you're outputting the site boundary, the facade, the floors, the floor edges, cores, internal spaces, houses as well. But that would come through as CAD drawing that you can then manipulate in more detail. If you want an example, then we can share an export file with you, so you can have a go and open it up and see exactly how that's being used. But some of our more technical users are taking that a step further and starting to not just use what we've got here, but using their own integrations and options and knowledge within their practice. They're starting to put in individual floor plans and other elements to outputs that we're getting through SiteSolve from that VXF and JSON formats as well. Again, it gets quite technical quite quickly, so we can take that offline as well. And then the final question, parking, that we've got here. What SiteSolve will do is it will give you a kind of element of, well, it will give you the area of SiteSolve for parking that is required per unit, given what inputs you put in there as well. So once you've done that, it will give you that area. What you can then do is create an exclusion zone. So it won't necessarily tell you exactly where that parking needs to be. That's really up to you. But you can create an exclusion zone and label that parking, and nothing would be built on that site. Alternatively, you could use some of that podium site as parking as well. And again, this is where using the generative design and your own expertise come together.
Yeah, sorry, I was just reading through some of the questions, so I didn't hear all of Andrew's response on the parking element, but just to note as well, in the housing generation, it actually asks where you want the parking to be placed for those housing, or the housing that you put on the site, so whether or not that's at the front of the house. So that is in there. And then also, you know, if you wanted to make sure that the ground floor was kept free of any design, you could then allocate that ground floor space to parking. Or, you know, the assumption is potentially that you go underground for some of that parking. And then there was a question about the placement of the plant rooms. So the default setting is for the plant rooms to be placed at the ground floor of the building, but we can actually uncheck that and have the plant allocated elsewhere in the design as well. So just worth moving that one.
Okay, so yeah, that kind of, we're going to wrap up there then. As I said, I'll just leave some of the details, or our details at least, on the screen for a little bit, just so you've got reference to those.
And while we do that as well, we'll run a quick poll as well on the room.
Yeah, okay, so I'll just set up that poll. There we go. So hopefully we've convinced you to some level. So far it's looking pretty good. In some cases, maybe not. So I'm just going to share our details as well. So you've got those to hand. Okay, so we've got quite a few responses so far. You've got another few seconds to get that in. I don't know if you can see this live.
Well, it's making me smile.
It's making me smile too.
Great demo.
So
yeah, and Andrew did touch on it. You know, more than happy to take some of those more technical questions offline, but also, if anybody does want us to do a demo to their wider office or their team, we're happy to set up some bespoke sessions. And if you want to focus on a particular site as well, we're happy to do that.
So I'm just going to share the results with everyone. Hopefully everyone can see that. So 94% saying yes. 6% saying no, so it'd be interesting to understand why, perhaps, but we can't win everyone over. but yeah, no, that's really good to hear, and definitely, you've got our contact details there. We can also share as well with you guys a link if you want to learn more about SiteSolve. I'm just going to share this in the chat very quickly. 1 second.
It's not easy having to
Not easy.
navigate a few different softwares at the same time. So
yeah, so if you want kind of a more personalized or more bespoke demo, then we can definitely run one for you. On our website. We'll share this link with everyone when the recording goes out anyway. It's on our website. If you go to VU.CITY and through to the SiteSolve page, then there's an option there to request a demo. But again, you've got our email addresses there. So if you want to reach out personally, then please feel free to do that, and we will arrange a demo in the context perhaps of one of your sites, or even maybe looking or having a look at one of your more recent projects to compare how the results have come out as well. But yeah, thanks everyone for attending. There were a couple of hiccups in there, but I think it went smoothly anyway. Great to hear the results of that poll as well, and look forward to speaking to you individually over the next few weeks.
thanks everyone. Have a nice day.
Bye.
Bye.